Okay. Meeting will come to order. Everyone please rise for the pledge of allegiance. Pledge of allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hi. First, Darcy, please, make the roll call, please.
Trustee Dobrow. Trustee Repa.
Here.
Member Jersey. Member Schultz. Member Francisco.
Present.
Chair Haley.
Present.
We have a quorum.
All right, public comment. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to make any comments? Hearing none, public comments are now closed. And now we get to the real fun part, the budget review and the discussion. Anyone from the committee wish to make any quick discussion before I start opening things up? Come on, guys, don't leave me hanging.
For the committee's convenience, I will put a copy of the budget up here on the screen. I will zoom and navigate as need be so people can try and see.
This is very tiny, I know, isn't it?
The printed copy is extremely tiny, and that's part of the reason we have this available in digital format and all received the spreadsheet, in addition to the printed version of the PDF.
Well, I've been doing a little bit of review on some of this stuff, and right now, as we see, at least for the town fund, we're about, correct me if I'm wrong, about $100,000 short under the current proposal, correct?
I believe that number is reflected on the screen here. The net revenue or loss for the town plus assessors fund, which is funds 10 and 12, is minus 145,000 based on the current proposed budgets.
Okay. Been kind of playing around.
Out of note, 50,000 of that is tied to contingencies or deductibles, which are not expected to be spent, but are there solely for the purpose of if it needs to be spent, which does leave the expected overall loss at about 95,000. So that's the number we're looking at there.
So I've been kind of toying around with this for a little bit here. Right now, from what I'm looking at least from the legal side, they're requesting to spend a budget of at least $54,000 for legal expenses, correct?
Yeah, we were gonna reduce that.
I was going to be playing around with this idea that we cut that down to at least $12,000 and put at least an additional $13,000 under contingency funds. That way we can help avoid some of that. Because I'm hoping that we're not going to be seeing too much legal.
So what's my say on this? My laptop or not?
Yeah, I can let you, yeah.
So, I know I was thinking more like 25,000. Just because, I mean, we're still making it half than what we had before. But, even if we're looking at other attorneys, they have increased their price. It's not just, Ansel and Blink, but other places too. Even though last few meetings we've not had an attorney, the unexpected could come up. So I'm suggesting that we reduce it to 25,000 to start off with. We could definitely play around with numbers, but 12,000, you go beyond fast, and that would be my concern is then we have no, when we go through our contingencies fast.
Mhm.
So that's my suggestion.
I just have a cautionary tale as well.
Go ahead.
It's traditionally, budgets have been traditionally litigation, had litigation issues. And so I would caution cutting it down too much because I'm just looking at patterns and I want to be prepared for it.
Mhm.
I mean, I do agree with that too. It's the unknown.
I understand. I'm just kicking around my 2 cents here.
Oh, no, I said that's fine. So I just know that, we've talked about that before a little bit. That's why I'm be concerned about 12 or 15 something.
And I know that we've been having some discussions about potential grants for the upcoming financial year.
Mhm.
But, you know, one of the things that keeps bugging my mind for the last couple of weeks has been the fact that we got a deficit proposal here of at least $145,000. And I know that the request has been for grants for at least $10,000. And I'm sure that it's going to be a good proposal for grants that may be coming up here in that. The fact of the matter is, I don't see us having a budget for that. And if we really have any grant proposals that could easily get inside the GA funds if need be.
Depends on what it is. I mean, I'm willing to work with the grants. I don't have a problem with reducing, because if we all have to figure out how to compromise. I said, I do have a lead right now. We made it to the second round. And they've actually upped my grant from what I asked for $20,000. But you just kind of like you're in the running. You don't know if you're going to receive it yet. I was hoping to find out before the budget is finalized too. So, I mean, I definitely have flexibility there because if we don't have the money, I don't think we should spend, but we do need to make sure that we are taking care of this property. So again, I have no problem to put a little question mark or highlight it as cautionary because we got to figure out how to get this budget down. But I do believe legal, we got to keep it 25 at least.
Okay, and like I said, it was just kind of spitball.
No, that's, I mean, I'm willing to give, but I don't want us to get in trouble financially with legal.
I understand. And, sometimes we're gonna have to be taking a deeper look at some other things here too. I mean, we can make the recommendations here, but at the end of the day, it's gonna be the board to make the final decision here. You guys could easily look at this and say, it's a great proposal, but we're gonna do something entirely different too. So we can recommend this until we're blue in the face, but then the board will have the final say on that.
So is somebody tonight going to make you going to make a recommendation to the board after the finance committee meets of what your suggestions are or what we come up with as, okay.
That's partially going to be our plan here, and I was planning to stick around after the finance meeting to also try to answer whatever questions that the board might have as well.
So Crystal, are you making notes that says what the finance committee wants to have? So that it'll give us another perspective.
Yep, I think we'll see that under this column F, which is revision 1 right now. This is what was
Okay.
emailed out. We'll play in here for today.
Okay.
Because this is just the first round of what kind of changes do we want to potentially look at.
Sounds good.
I think the proposal that the chair was talking about was to reduce legal to 12,000, so I'm going to do that here. But I think he also mentioned an offset to contingencies, which would put that back up. This is, the way we're looking at this is just what do we expect to spend versus what are we putting to the side just in case we need to authorize that transfer. So it kind of addresses, I think, both parts of that, which is I understand where from the finance side, where the supervisor would prefer to have that larger balance available. Just in case, and I think that's what the contingencies adjustment, taking the difference down out of we expect to spend and moving it into the if we need to spend might be a way to help offset the expected cost. But that's really just some wizardry on a piece of paper that doesn't really address the actual amounts.
Yeah, I'd be very concerned with 12,000. Very concerned.
Okay, Travis, can you just back that up? And so I followed that conversation again.
Go ahead.
Your proposal was to take it down to 12,000. I understand your point of view. But to take the 54 down to 12 and then part of that 54 to take 13,000 and move that to contingency account. It's the same 25 that she's talking about. It's just how we would have divided it up.
Correct.
Okay.
That's kind of what I was kind of thinking in my head the last few days is how can we at least balance this out that in case, God forbid, the township does incur, let's say, a lawsuit or whatever may occur legally, that we can at least have a little bit of flexibility here to at least meet whatever potential outcome that might be occurring with that.
Yeah, I can definitely understand your point why you would be concerned with that, with the number being low.
But we can still keep going. And I said right now, this is just the committee. So,
Right, yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I'm open
So
to listen to
you're-
what everybody is.
For the sake of this argument, you're putting it in at his 12,000 and you're moving the 13,000 into.
Contingencies, correct, just for the sake of being able
And
to
then later
visualize it,
on,
correct.
at the board meeting, I could say, I think it should be 20.
I just want to make sure I brought my head around.
Yeah.
I mean,
know where you're going. Almost 60% of the budget is personnel,
yes,
which is kind of a no adjustment area.
that is going to be partially the problem here because we're looking at still a deficit here, partially with salaries towards staff members. And I do believe both from the supervisor's office as well as from the assessor's office, they've been working due diligently across the board. I don't dare argue that. But the fact of the matter is, I've been looking at this for a while and I've had some talks with both the supervisor and the assessor separately, kind of saying, this is what we have to play with here right now. I wish I was making this up, but unfortunately, this is what we have at the moment. And short of actually getting a tax referendum through to raise taxes, which I would have to say is going to be a long shot, trying to sell that to
Mhm,
people. This is what we have to deal with at the moment.
I believe. Yeah.
If anyone from finance wants to make any comments on what I'm saying here so far,
Other than I empathize with the squeeze. I mean, it's a tight squeeze. We are definitely squeezed. I think that's probably the difficulty with budgets is that budgets are, at the end of the day, an expression of our values. And
I think that's good. I think that's a I think that's well.
so,
I mean, we can wrap ourselves up many times of how we got ourselves into this predicament. You know, we could have that discussion as much as we want, but
it
this
doesn't
is,
change where we
this is
are.
where we're at right now, and this is what we have to play with. Essentially.
It's in the building fund, I recall some improvements being needed, but that's one of the larger, outside of personnel, it's one of the larger buckets. I know we had a leaky roof potential, we had.
Yeah, I think we have 7 for the outside, so I mean, I said that we get rid of that. If we need to, I'm fine with that, but if we still have a roof that, you know, we had somebody come out, you know, again, it's all like, we could take a chance or not put it in, but if something happens, more contingency.
Yeah, this is one of those where we did do this so that there's $30,000 in the Fund 14, that's the newly created capital fund. So the money could be spent from that for capital improvements as opposed from here. So everybody has the basis. The recommendation from the Finance Committee last year was to allocate $12,000 and $18,000 to a long-term savings plan for roof and paving.
Mhm.
So that's where that number originated from. I'm just making sure new members are up to date on that.
Thank you.
And the idea was to have that contributed over a 5-year period so that at the end of that 5 years, those concerns could be addressed. And it could be done in a cash positive way as opposed to going out and dealing with debts or other things. But it was also to insulate that money to ensure that if we had the appropriate cash balances, that money couldn't be attacked for being over what we can keep in our reserves. So a property tax challenge, things that we've had happen historically. So we wanted to make sure we took the protections to insulate ourselves from that. I think there was one quote that came back for roofs that's really old,
Right, well, earlier this year.
earlier from or last year
Last
actually
year,
at this
yeah.
point. And the numbers, the ballpark numbers for redoing just the flat roof portions were somewhere between 30 and 50,000 is the rough guesstimate. And I don't know where that's at in terms of end of life or anything else, because I think it was just somebody who randomly happened to be here and give a quote. So,
They came out here too, yeah.
right, so, but I guess the part with this is if the money isn't there, we don't physically have to transfer this money at the end of the year, and we don't have to spend that capital money.
Mhm.
But it's allocating, much like the highway supervisor's done in the past, in case something happens, the budget's there. So we can look at that as more contingency spending as opposed to guaranteed spending. And that's one way the board can look at that, and the finance committee can review that as well to go, that's not committed money.
I mean, the reason we put such little amounts in the budget last year was because of the former supervisor where we took away his, power to spend under the contingency.
Mhm.
Yeah. Office equipment, different story. That's for technology and other investments that we've talked about. The assessor getting new technology on his budget as well, which is way overdue and way needed. But we've got some somewhat dated technology on the town side too. That would be more of an expected spend.
Yeah, and as I told the assessor, even to the supervisor, as much as I would love to cut a check for $1 million for you guys, or pretend to cut you a check for $1 million, unfortunately, this is what we have to play with right now. I mean, I hate to sound like a broken record at this point, but this is what we have literally in front of us right now.
So I'm going to go ahead and do this. And take this $30,000 and make that part of a contingency number as well, just for visualization purposes. Between contingencies, liability deductible, and now the capital expenditures being done as more of a contingency in case something breaks type of money. That's what our expected net income or loss for the year would be.
So that loss of 45,000 is with or without the highway and contingency? I just want to clarify that.
Yeah, so the 45,000 is assuming we don't have to spend those contingency monies or have those liability deductibles impact us. Those are things, the insurance deductible, that's the $25,000. In case we're sued for something significant, that's our deductible portion. So that's in the budget in case we need to spend it, but we don't intend to. The same thing with the other contingency lines is it's there if we need it, but the intent is not to use it. I know we've seen this past fiscal year, we've had to use all of it. But in other years, sometimes we don't. So it really becomes a question of, I think, you know, Member Francisco put that really eloquently, that it's a question of our values and how do we see things. So that's really the decision. It's that the money's still there. It's just whether we intend to spend it or not. And understanding what that impact would be.
Well, okay. And then just backing this all the way up. No, yeah, backing this all the way up. These were set out at expecting to receive like 95% of our levy, right?
Correct.
What? And just to wrap my head around it, so I'm just trying to see like, because we're down to like, you know, 45,000. What do we typically get? Like, is 95 what we typically get? Is that like the midpoint of what we get? We usually get a little bit more, so the 95 was a really conservative number.
I believe that was the real conservative.
That's a number, but that's the number we're going with.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm not asking us to change the
Yeah.
number. I'm just trying to wrap my head around like, if I'm making a recommendation and, you know, like say it's minus $45,000, or it comes, you know, to whatever, when we move it to contingencies, right? If we get more than the 95% that we're expected, what I want to know is like, if we can move that down to where, like, say, we've budgeted at 95%, but typically what we get is 97%. We're not gonna actually say that out loud, but that's typically what we get, right? Then if that $45,000 comes into that, then I'm a little bit more comfortable with the way that the structure is,
We don't know.
but we won't know.
Here's what I'm thinking though, is that the way the economy is going right now, with inflation being so high, is that because inflation's high, housing prices are higher, because housing prices are higher, property taxes are gonna increase in terms of.
But we're still lagging, right? The way the taxes are levied are still lagging on a year basis. Do we have an answer to that question?
What is your prediction?
What's your prediction about the taxes?
On the house.
For the housing?
5%.
What about?
Well, what's your prediction? I mean, do you think the taxes are gonna be going up for the housing?
Did they say the state level is good?
for the assessed value.
Have you done that?
The
It's kind of what our assessed value is going up. Yeah, real assessments, the assessments will be going up.
Well, look, it doesn't really matter what, the assessments are, if they go up, you know, from a multiplier by the county, then everybody's going up the same amount. So there's no increase in the tax part of it. What you look at is, you know, whether the board, when they approved the levy, what did they do? Did they levy more than 5%? Did they have a truth in taxation where they had to levy more or ask for more than 5%? And anything above that is generally on new construction. So if you levy 10%, let's say, then the amount usually is above the CPI number is on new construction. I don't know if, I don't think the levy that was approved in December did that. So if you're looking at, you know, so what you're looking at is whatever, I don't know what the number was for the levy. Was it like 3%? I don't know what the levy number was. Do you know?
1.6 was CPI.
So essentially you're looking at, you know, 1.6. Plus if there's any new construction, and I would have to look at it, but there probably wasn't a whole lot of new construction, then you may get, you may be getting in like $10,000 or $20,000, you know, more because of the new construction. So about the 1.6, but that's it. But so that's where you are this year. Next year, so next year will be a different story in terms of what the board decides to levy, you know, next year. It doesn't matter what taxes do, or it doesn't matter what the assessments do. You know, you already got your levy number in, and it's in dollars, so that's what you're gonna get, or, well, we're pretty close to it, depending on what is 1.6%, if that equals that dollar amount, or whatever, plus any
So
new construction.
what I think what we're more likely to face with inflation is that our levy just simply isn't gonna be enough. Inflation's gonna be up that much.
Do you have any comments, Richard?
I don't know if we just go subcategory by subcategory of the budget. We gotta find $100,000.
Well, I mean, if we take the assumptions that we're still looking at 40, we're still looking at 45, right?
That's if we don't spend those contingencies, which, I mean, you know, you can be hopeful and say
Yeah,
that,
fingers crossed, yeah.
you know, you can be hopeful and say that we won't need a new roof this year, you know, and then we don't spend that money. And folks still under 45K at the end of the day there.
And if the roof collapses, you have to spend the money.
There's the competitive, yeah.
And we've been saying, but we've been,
So we have to.
we've been talking about that roof for as long as I can remember. At one point, exactly.
I mean, I'm not a spender, so I'm not, you know, planning on doing much, but if something happens,
No, you have to. I mean,
and, you know, the plumbing breaks or things happen, I know last year there was like a $3,000 plumbing, was it $3,000, something like that, unexpected, that,
No, I mean, the building's just as old as it is. I mean, that's what it is.
not on everything.
It's not just the building issues, that it's everything that permeates everything about the township. As you look at the revenues of all of the townships, we're at a very big disadvantage. And so that affects not only the squabble about what we pay our employees, how much it costs for a roof, it also has to do with what services we can get, what programs we can run. It permeates everything. So this is a triple-edged sword. It's not just that, you know, we've got, I'll take the highway department's employees that haven't had a raise since 2019. It's not just that. It's the fact that we have had to cut back and eliminate, not be so forward thinking on the programs that we can offer to our constituents that actually need the support.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and I agree. We put those contingencies there for a reason, and that's good practice, and that's good philosophy.
But it doesn't work.
If God blesses the building, it doesn't collapse, but if, yeah, so, you know, it just, you need to be as prepared as possible, and you're right. We have a deficit that we're going to have to deal with, and somehow we're going to have to deal with that. The contingencies were smart on so many levels. It was smart on the fact that we are planning, and planning is good. Smart on the levels that we've earmarked money so that they're not touchable by people that are going to challenge their taxes, their assessments, and try to get that money back. Those are all good things, but it's still about the services to this community. And that's the part that rubs me wrong.
So
It should.
one question I have then is, what are our alternatives for getting more revenue into the township?
That was my next
Right
question.
now, the only alternative that we have here right now, there's at least two that I can see. Either applying for certain grants.
That they have to do towards certain programs.
Right.
Which if we look is, obviously we're looking at that for highway, department, projects and other projects we can specifically target.
And the other one would be, and I think this would have to be approved at the town meeting, is essentially do a tax referendum to increase taxes. And that alone is a dangerous sword to play
Yeah,
with.
right now,
too.
this is a tough one.
I've been on both sides of that fence, and quite frankly, I've passed levies, worked on passing levies for people that said we'd never pass them. Fact is that this community understands me.
I just have
And I agree, it's an uphill battle, but if we need the money, we need the money. We should be honest with the constituents and be able to say, this is what we need, and this is why we need it, and we're hoping that you'll pass it,
And have a clear argument for
and
it.
have a clear argument.
So clarification on that is, for a town meeting, is that to vote on whether to just raise it or to vote to get a referendum on the ballot for people to vote on later?
As I understand it, and I would let the clerk clarify this if I'm wrong, because you're more of an expert on this than me. Essentially, what would happen is that we would be asking for a tax hike, if you will, pretty much how school boards do that. And instead of having the board approve that, that has to be approved by the voters of Avon Township at the town meeting, instead of having the board do that. And if that passes, then that goes into the November ballot elections, and that will be voted on.
But it doesn't help us for this year. And, and then again, we gotta look at, which we can still do, but what we have to look at is too, the constituents are gonna be looking at our budget. They're gonna be looking very closely at everything that we're spending on. And, they're gonna be looking for certain things, not everybody, but certain people. So if we are gonna do that, we really have to look at our budget and figure out where we're spending, because if we show that we're spending our money unnecessarily, besides me getting attacked, everyone, it's gonna be the township is spending money, which we said we're not gonna do. So I think if we're gonna do that again, it wouldn't even help us until next year, but we have to really look at our budget.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I'm thinking about that, and I don't think in this environment right now that a referendum would pass. Like, regardless of if we would support it or be against it, I don't think a referendum would
We
pass.
could always call a town hall meeting
Unless we,
next year too, though, earlier though, can't we? Can we call
I
a town
mean-
hall meeting?
There's all kinds of procedures for calling town hall meetings on demand as needed, so
Okay, so we could.
we can certainly do that. I think
But I think right now, I think the economy with gas, with so many things, not that we shouldn't do it, but we have to really, right now, I think we have to focus on this,
Yeah.
this budget right now.
Fact is that, no, and I'll use school referendums since that's the ones I'm most familiar with, for the referendum. You never pass a referendum because teachers need more. You never pass a referendum because, you want to add football. You pass referendums for very serious, very global kinds of thinking issues. And if they look at your budget, for Michelle's point, if they look at it and they see big divides between what we say you need versus what is in your budget, that will cause our fight.
Yeah, that's my concern too. I mean, so right now, again, I'm not a committee member, but I would think we should just keep on focusing right now on the budget. There's only 25 minutes left.
Yes, because honestly, just with my proposals alone, this is only cookie cutting this a little bit more. we would have to be looking at other things too, so quite frankly, what is it that the supervisor really needs along with the assessor's office? Because I know I'm gonna sound like a broken record, what I'm about to say here, but I'll say it again, this is what we have to work with.
All right. And then,
I went and plugged your 98% in as revenue, so we can see
No.
what that looks like just on the screen.
okay,
Because I want to be able to answer questions as we look at it. That takes the 40 something and puts it to 26.
Yeah.
But again, we're still looking at contingency spending, and if that money needs to be used, that's still minus $140,000.
We're just using magical,
yeah,
Yeah,
no,
just-
I understand that.
It's how does it look on paper versus what's the actual
Yeah.
expect, you know?
we haven't lost it
And
all.
all this is saying is it's expressing the value of, we don't want to spend that money, but we're going to plan for it in case we need
Right.
to.
Well,
And I
but,
think that's not necessarily irresponsible, but it also doesn't necessarily speak to the actual intent or need. And so that is a tough decision point.
yeah. And this budget that we have, it reflects the pay raises that we're advocating for.
Correct.
Yes.
So I'm gonna go up here just to demonstrate. That was the assessor's revised number, 198,000 was the payroll number. I think was your full ask. I think we confirmed that number last week, so I'm just, yeah, I just want to make sure that that everything's represented, that the appropriate heads have seen that. And we haven't even gotten the highway numbers and we haven't looked at that yet. So. But your numbers, Bob, are the same as were requested too.
I mean,
I think maybe we go line by line, go through the budget. The hard truth is there's not a lot of comment. Utilities are utilities, salary is salary,
Mhm.
insurance is insurance. All the contingencies have to go. And that still doesn't get us all the way there.
I mean, we could look at GA. I have no problem having, having people look at the GA budget right now.
The GA is GA, that's a
It
separate.
is, but there are things that are added. I'm just saying is if we're trying to look at the whole budget. I mean, if we go past 7 o'clock, are we allowed to have the finance committee as a whole, or do we just kind of switch seats around?
If we continue past 7 o'clock, then we can simply delay the start of the regular board meeting until this meeting is concluded.
Okay, because I.
Because it is 7 o'clock or technically as needed, so we can do that with the discretion of the chair of the next meeting.
Okay, if that's okay with you guys, I would
I
hate
have no
to
objection.
cut this off at the
Supervisor has
time
no
if we're
objection.
not doing it.
No, that's a perfect suggestion.
Okay,
Yeah, I have no objection if the supervisor doesn't.
I do not.
I mean, I hate to say this, but we're pretty much cutting out all the fat here as it is right now. And as I said, I know that the staff has been working diligently under these circumstances. And on top of that, I know you guys need new computers and that from both offices. I'm not denying that either. But the only other way that we are going to be able to look at this is if we actually start cutting the bone. And I really don't want to do that, but unfortunately, this is what we have to play with right now. If we don't start looking at it that way, then I don't see any other options unless if anyone else has any better ideas.
So I don't.
I think that if we want to do a referendum in the future or try and even push a referendum in the future, it's gonna have to be for something solid, like an actual, like, realistic thing that people can understand. And that might just have to be the roof. And in that case, we have to make sure that we don't spend that money. We can put it in a separate category, but we can't touch it. We can allocate it in case we need to, like the roof literally breaks. We can allocate it. I think that's fine, but I don't think we can spend that this year. And that way, maybe we start building up to it in the following years. Either we're looking at different types of, easier financing or looking at what we can cut in other places. We can kind of build up to that roof, and or we can build up to a referendum.
So do you want to look at Bob's? Do you want to look at mine?
Well, the thing is, those are from different,
But I'm
Yeah.
saying, but it's still excellent, we only have still excellent.
but
They're
those
different
come from
levies.
different
Different levies,
funds.
but yeah.
Those come from different
I
funds.
know, I
Yeah,
just want to
that's
make
from the
sure that
the highway.
everybody's looking at why we're together right now.
Because the town and the assessor share the same budget, and that budget and the income for it are the only
Oh,
income.
no, I understand that. I just want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity
Yeah.
to, I think, to discuss all of the budgets while you guys are here, just so we know overall where township is spending the money.
And we do have, again, operating income that can hold us over until we get that, the levies in.
Yeah,
So that's what these
Yeah.
numbers are, is that this number came from our February 8th board meeting. That was the last fund balance that was presented by our bookkeeper.
I think May, we're supposed to get our next
Distribution, but
distribution in May.
So I think one of
the point being for the fiscal year, the ending balance would be 453,000, or equates to, that's based on this magic number right now, 71% of what our levy is.
So what I think is that,
She was raising her hand. I'm gonna.
Oh.
Right.
so what I think is that even though we're at a net loss for this year right now, I think there are three things in here which I think we could operate under this with some things in mind. One is that we could get a little bit more income as the year comes on, and we get potentially more than 95%, hopefully. We do have an operating fund that can bring us later into the year. We don't spend the roof and we don't spend any contingencies. We're getting closer to that. And then at the end of the day, I think we have to approve a budget at some point. And obviously, I don't think we should do that tonight necessarily, but, point is that, we can think about as we go into the next couple of months, looking at this assessor and town budget more in depth, potentially looking at some of the other categories and seeing what we can merge and or cut. And that's something that we can be a continuing conversation that I think has to be talked about. And that is something that I think we should do in terms of employees' salary. Looking forward into the future, and that's a really tough conversation, but I think it might just need to be had. And seeing if there's any cost saving measures that we can do in those departments, because I'm trying to that and or work up to a referendum in some other way, because these problems are not going to be solved tonight. They're going to have to be solved through negotiation and planning over the next couple of months.
Right, I mean, salaries would be hard to get recommended for. It would have to be something tangible that the township needs.
And so those are things that we can look into. I'm just thinking in terms of looking at political environment, in terms of the economic environment out there. Things are really up in the air right now, and I do not see the time to have done a referendum, in my opinion, would have been 2018, 4 years ago. It's not the same. And,
I want to just bring up another suggestion, another avenue that you have. It's difficult for a board, any board, to make decisions on how to cut the budget because you don't build the budget, the staff build the budget. You could challenge the staff. You could say, we need to cut $100,000 from the budget. And we want to cut a percentage and challenge the staff to go back to their budgets and realign their budgets and come back with a proposal under that suggestion. That way you're relying on the expertise that you have with the staff, understanding that you're right. We have a deficit and we need to address that. And so put it back on staff to go back, put their heads together and figure out a way to lower their requests.
so,
Go ahead.
and so I think that in terms of budget, this is something that I think we can live with for now in terms of being in a negative. I don't like it, but we can deal with that given we have some operating expenses. But it doesn't get rid of the fact that we're going to either have to go down a road where we choose to either cut or raise. And we have to have that conversation as we go into the summer and engage all parties and departments when it comes to this budget on that.
Sure. Go ahead.
You're showing negative number 26, right? All right, so I mean, that's this budget, right? But next year, or not this year, in December, you're gonna pass a levy, you have 5%, right? The CPI is higher than 5% right now.
We're going to pass a levy because we're required to by law. I can't tell you what the number is going to be. The discussion would probably go, inflation was over 7, we'll probably have to do something like that, just to
I'm saying,
come close to breaking even.
if you levy 5, right, you'd get an extra, you'd get additional 30,000, at least based on where you are. Plus, if you had a levy that was more, you're gonna, if you did a truth of taxation that went over that for new construction, now we've got some new construction, gonna get you some other section. So you're probably gonna get in another, now I know this is next year, but if you're talking about negatives and where you're gonna project down the line, with where you are right now, if you did the same thing next year, you would be, with the way you've done it, you'd be even. Or actually, you'd be plus $3,000, roughly, because of the levy. The levy's gonna get you in more money next year. Now, you're not gonna be at this levy, it'll be 5% higher than the 620.
If our costs stayed flat, that would be a true statement.
But I'm saying, if
They
you're
won't.
operating under this budget. Now, the other thing you keep in mind is, in my office anyway, is you're gonna have a couple people coming off the insurance next year. They're gonna be, we have kids, they're gonna be over 26.
Yeah,
Now, I get not a lot of savings, right? But that's roughly, that's about, $600 a month with the two of them. So I think $7,200 that you're gonna be saving, the township's gonna be saving. So there's things that are gonna be happening, not a lot, but there are little things incremental that, that can help get you back, the township back to.
Travis, what's
This,
the overall percentage that would need to be cut to get it to align? Do you have that number?
I don't have it in front of me, but what would you say there, what we got here so far?
That's a crystal thing. She just.
I know Crystal's so good at this.
Yeah.
Watching her work.
So right now, we are at. So if we wanted to say that we were completely neutral, not say contingency neutral, but neutral, like we have enough money to cover everything. And the contingencies aren't a, oh my gosh, we saved that money, right? That would be the perfect world where, money can be saved when we don't spend it, as opposed to, oh gosh, we didn't lose more. You're looking at 119,000 out of a 650. Maybe 20%. I just did the math backwards, but 20%, 1/5.
That's a big cut. I mean, if we're gonna go back to staff, that's a big cut, I think, to ask.
Right, and that's 20% based on what we've already gone through and nickel and dime have reallocated, so that's a big number.
But I do think I do think we need to ask staff to try.
Because, as I said from the very beginning, when some people have raised concerns, I said I would do my best here. I'm not gonna make everyone happy here, but I will do my best to help everyone to come up with something that we can all live with here. And I wish I was lying here, but as I said, these are the numbers we're playing with.
So let's just go through the whole page. So.
Yeah, do you want me to walk through these line by line?
I
And I'm gonna
think-
try and do it briefly, but
But I think we have to do that because you have to look at the whole picture because we need to separate, but we need to look at the whole visual picture. Otherwise, we're not gonna understand because then we give and take and figure out where more little cuts could be. Like I have a couple questions for the trustees, actually. For training, are you planning on going to Springfield? You know what I mean? Because we have like money designated for you to get trained in Springfield, which is great. You know what I mean? Are you planning on going to topic training in November? Are you planning on, because there's money, there's mileage, there's things like that where we put in there for you guys. But it's money that, again, you don't have to make a decision. I'm focusing on you because you're the trustee that's here right now. But again, these are things just to think about.
And I think that's actually a key thing is that's something that we can have in this budget that comes off of that number that, quite frankly, if we're looking towards the end of the year and it's not looking that fantastic, I don't need to go to Springfield if that's the case. That's a sacrifice that I can.
Right, where like for me, it's important for me to go, but we have other training, we have mileage, we have different things that I don't want to take away from anything the trustees want to do because I believe in education, but by far. But if it's something that you guys can't go to because of work or things like that, they may only be $2,000 or, $1,000, but that's money that we're gonna keep whittling down. But like, oh, Eugene, you're here, I apologize.
Sorry, I don't know.
So do you plan on going to topic day?
But you're asking the wrong person. I've already gone.
I know, but I'm just, I'm focusing on reading it.
I think the biggest thing is, I think we can pass a budget like, something like this for this year, and it can be negative, that's okay. It's just, we can't do this 2 years in a row, and during the process from this year's budget, next year's budget, we need to actually get these things nailed down and understand, all right, are we cutting some things here and there? when it
Right,
comes
so
to
let's
the
keep going
actual-
down, not
you
keeping
know,
control.
So just to
sorry.
go through these really quick on salary lines.
Yeah.
Salaries officials, set by ordinance, can't be changed. That number's set in stone. I mean, it's hard to hard. Salaries for employees, that's for our bookkeeper on the town side. FICA, IMRF, health insurance, dental, life and unemployment insurance are reflective of the employees, the officials, and reflective of the one employee on the town side. That does not reflect GA employees or GA contributions. So just to be clear, those numbers for the most part cannot be changed in any significant manner, except for perhaps this one. When I change this number, I'm doing this for visualization purposes right now. If we change this number and say this employee goes away, just so you can see the impact, there's an additional like $3,000 saved on FICA. The rest of it doesn't change because that's a part-time employee. They don't qualify for IMRF. They don't qualify for other things. So just perspective, that's all I want to be able to provide that for. I'm putting that number back.
I'm sorry, the assessor wanted to say something? Oh, okay.
Okay, maintenance for the building, maintenance for equipment, grounds and landscaping. These are things that we need to have there if something goes wrong with the building. General maintenance of the building, general maintenance of equipment, like our copier. If the copier fails, we can no longer perform certain tasks. Right? And that's expensive. There's leases involved with that are built into it. They're long-term leases. So those are things that are really tough to cut, and we've already squished those as much as we can. Just giving perspective. Accounting services, that's an expected number for our annual audit. We're required to do that by law. That number is kind of set in stone. Switching to another auditor would be more expensive. We've looked at that in the past.
I actually, can you go back up for a second to the landscaping for a moment?
Sure.
So is that in terms of like mowing lawn, essentially?
That's in terms of going along. And Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, but a big chunk of that goes to our contribution to ATYB as part of their agreement with the two park districts. Do you recall that?
We do, you guys do make a contribution towards that along with the two park districts.
Well, I mean, I recently just met with Clay and we used to give, I believe it was $1,800. I don't know if we, it was the agreement a while back.
There's nothing on.
There's nothing, okay, but yeah, we used to give money to maintain and then with the last administration, things kind of got.
And that was for the fields, right?
It was for the,
I don't know if they're not cutting their own now. I'm not sure how, you'd have to talk to.
yeah,
All
they're
these,
working on that, but
Hold on, hold on.
We're $100,000 over and that's $2,000.
I know, I'm just, this one thing I had in my mind, I wanted to get.
Every little bit helps, but.
Right, but that could also be considered ice melt and general things for just taking care of the entrance, taking care of
we get our salt
immediate
from
things. So
No, you guys don't use the road salt on the sidewalk.
okay, so we
You
just
know,
go on
the
that,
concrete.
okay.
yeah, we want the potassium chloride on the sidewalk. It doesn't damage the concrete.
Not as much.
Again, accounting services pretty much set in stone, required by law. We have to have an auditor because of the size of our budget. Legal services we've talked about. I don't need to go deeper into that one. Data processing covers things like our IT service agreements, our IT security, antivirus, connectivity for broadband, part of our phone connectivity, but not all of it. And there's no increase this year over last year, and we know that that number is going to stay relatively flat, or we hope so. Liability and general insurance, that is a number we hope to never spend. It's a number that we have to budget for.
Right.
Workers' comp insurance, that number is what it is.
Wait, that's your deductible.
Correct,
That's not your, okay,
correct.
thank you.
The workers' comp insurance, that number is what it is. Contingencies we can play with, again, we don't intend to spend it. but it's, you want it there. Catastrophic insurance, oh, sorry. Liability and general insurance is the actual policy. Catastrophic insurance is the deductible. They're two separate lines to segregate.
Thank you.
Sorry, thank you. The numbers are the same, so I get like, I got
Yeah.
a little,
It's just my husband's job and I'm like, that didn't make sense.
Yeah, we have 6 minutes. I just want to make sure that in case we do have people that are waiting, they could hop in, I guess, into our finance committee, if we have anybody who
Come on in, Michael.
wants to listen to our meeting.
We're at finance. First thing.
thank you.
I just want to make sure that
Yep,
we
if you give
start
me
this
a
meeting.
Yeah, give me a moment to. I can leave from one screen, join the other one, and then redirect them over here.
And then do we know if Jeff's not coming, so technically with Michael being here, everybody who's gonna be here is here. Okay, so we could just keep going after we do the,
Yeah,
because everything else won't take us very long to do either.
I'm fine to